All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis. Today on the show, we are going to talk a little bit about that news that just broke about Charlie Weis Jr. potentially. We're going to talk about why the struggles of the SEC and bowl games are a positive for Ole Miss, and we will discuss the bowl games that are going to happen today and the lines attached to them. So this is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast. Stick around.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis. Thank you very much for joining me today. The news just broke like 10 minutes before the show from Matt Zenitz that Charlie Weis Jr. is likely to be the Ole Miss offensive coordinator. Here it is right here, actually. And this is what he put. He said, Ole Miss is expected to hire USF's Charlie Weis Jr. as offensive coordinator, sources tell On3 Sports. He previously worked under Lane Kiffin as OC at FAU, 2018 and 2019, and as a support staffer at Alabama. There's a history there. So, let me explain a little bit of what's going on. Now, the nuts and bolts of this offense, and I realize that we talked about one thing and we're going to move into this part of the story, and then we're going to get into the SEC Bowl record, but we're going to lead with this because it just broke. The nuts and bolts of the offense, the Baylor stuff, the tempo, how they operate, at FAU was installed by Kendall Briles. That was the way they did it, to get that in there. After that, the hire was made outside of Kendall Briles. Charlie Weis Jr. got the job and was the offensive coordinator for 2 years. When Lane Kiffin came to Ole Miss, the same type situation happened. Even in this case, he wanted the Baylor-style offensive coordinator to go along with a Baylor-style offensive line coach and a Baylor-style tight end coach to make sure that tempo and the guts of the offense are just installed as quickly as possible. They did that. Whenever they moved on, after almost immediately, Randy Clements was let go. Joe John Finley went to Oklahoma, and this year Jeff Lebby left. So all the Baylor guys are gone. Now, just like FAU, they bring Charlie Weis in because there's obviously a situation to where Lane Kiffin trusts Charlie Weis Jr. or he would not hire him again. This was obviously a good experience. Now, what probably happened in the it's like, hey, we're going to take the Ole Miss job and we need to get the Baylor stuff installed quickly. Just so it's second nature and whatever. Go to USF or go wherever and start calling plays. I don't know if he did at USF, but this is what I think happened. It could have been Jeff Scott calling plays at USF. USF is very talent deficient. If you look at numbers, if you look at stats, you're going to be disappointed. They had a true freshman quarterback, and they could have beat UCF in the last game of the year. He just had a brain fart and got sacked with like 6 seconds left. It was bad. So anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including soon to be YouTube. And in doing that, we'll be able to talk about what's going on with YouTube. Anyway, so that's what's going on with Charlie Weis Jr. They expect him to be named. This is the playbook that they used at FAU. Remember, Lane Kiffin would not have the job at Ole Miss if Charlie Weis was a bad offensive coordinator. If that offense struggled and he was a detriment to that offense, Lane Kiffin would not be the coach at Ole Miss. This works. This is a plan. You can see it actually happen. To my knowledge, Ben Garrett was the first I saw of On3 Sports and the Ole Miss Spirit, is the first to report this that I saw. Said that Charlie Weis Jr. was the only interview. It's almost like this was the plan. Whenever Jeff Lebby got the job, if Jeff Lebby left, the plan would be Charlie Weis Jr. And I bet the interview was to make sure that he meshed with other staff members since this is a new staff. He knew he would work well with Kevin Smith. But you want to make sure that everything is copacetic with what's going with the offense, especially with Arch Manning sitting out there. This is a star maker type transition for Charlie Weiss Jr. 31 years old, with Arch Manning, getting all kinds of pub. He would have a chance to name his job. He might be this is a position where he could be a 32-year-old, 33-year-old head coach somewhere. That's what's going on with this job and why he would move that. Now, USF is kind of a dumpster fire at the moment. It is what it is. They're right down the road from me. I go by USF actually quite frequently, going to the hospital and doing my VA stuff and all my treatments going on with my brain stuff. And it's nice, but the stadium is located, they play in Raymond James. If y'all went to the Outback Bowl last year, you know Raymond James is on Del Mabry, way down there. USF is up in the northern part of the city. I don't think they're technically in Tampa. I think they're technically in like Temple Terrace or something like that. But the VA's up there. It's like a big medical complex where the USF campus is. The Shriners Hospital's up there as well. And they're talking about building an on-campus stadium, but they're at the point where Raymond James Stadium is a detriment to USF football. Charlie Weiss Jr. is a star. He grew up around football with Charlie Weiss. He hooked up with Lane Kiffin in 2015. He would have been, 23 years old, 22 years old at that point. He got the job as offensive coordinator at FAU in 2018. So I guess he was 25 at Alabama and he's 28 at FAU. They went on in 2019, won a conference championship. The quarterback, Brian Robeson, threw for 3,700 yards. They were kind of elite and still running the guts of the Baylor stuff. The offense is not going to look different than it did this year as far as what we're doing. It might look different because Matt Corral's not a quarterback, but the offense is not going to vary very much from where it was last year. They're going to run tempo. Everything's going to look the same because that offensive philosophy is a philosophy with Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin has had 3 offensive coordinators in 5 years, and the offense has not changed. Period. The 3 offensive coordinators in 5 years, and the offense has not changed. The longest running 2 are Charlie Weiss Jr. and Jeff Lebby. Kendall Briles was there for a year. After next year, Charlie Weiss Jr. will officially be the offensive coordinator with the longest tenure with Lane Kiffin. It should be pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to it, and I just think that looking at it, it could work out. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's easy to connect the dots. And also, if Charlie Weiss Jr. wasn't a terrific recruiter, he would not get the job. For those that are worrying about Arch Manning, which should come out in 6-7 months time, or less than that now, 3 or 4. Good grief. That's right. It's almost January, isn't it? But with this going on, this is the thinking behind what happened. Remember, this offense is Lane Kiffin's offense at this point. 3 offensive coordinators in 5 years. It hasn't changed. This is Lane Kiffin's offense. So don't start thinking about Baylor guys as being the way that this needs to move forward. Baylor guys just get there for the install. And then when Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss and goes to his next job, he's going to bring one of those Baylor guys with him. He's going to find one to get the tempo where it needs to be. Not the Josh Heupel stuff necessarily or whatever's going on, but he's going to find one in that circle to install and get ready. Probably not Randy Clements, though. So, all right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about why the SEC bowl struggles that is currently happening doesn't really matter. Who cares? One of those type situations. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Yes, have you heard about Built Bar? That's Built Bar. Basically, it's a tasty treat that tastes like a candy bar, even better than a candy bar. It's a Built Bar. It's built with so much holiday goodness, rich and decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, and net carbs, along with fat. It's also high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. So many flavors, you'll have a hard time choosing. Will you have raspberry or mint brownie or cherry or double chocolate? So many different things are available for you. You friends with Santa? Tell Santa to throw a few Built Bars into those stockings with so many flavors they'd make anybody's Christmas morning a happy one. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. Again, go to Built.com, use promo and the mic was off during that whole segment. I muted it, and basically the mic was off that whole segment. So we're going to keep talking, and we're going to do it again real quick. So thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. Make sure you check out the Ultimate College Football Playoff Preview and 2021 local experts, betting advice, and draft analysis. Most comprehensive football preview is live now. So thank you very much for tuning in and what's going on. I had that muted for like 5 minutes, and that was absolutely silly. It was one of those things where it happened. So Ole Miss is rooting, honestly, for the SEC to do poorly in the bowl games. SEC right now is 0-4. It's going to go 0-5 whenever South Carolina gets going, because they're going to be an underdog, I think, and North Carolina is going to take care of business. They might win the game. Who knows? Bowl games are weird like that. But I'm not expecting them to win the game. So that's 0-5. It's going to look. Now, the reality of this is there's 13 SEC teams that got bowl invites. They're going to go 0-5 or 0-6 if you count Texas A&M, which shouldn't be able to use the 12th man ever again after canceling games because not enough players when you have enough players. There's 100 players on the roster. The reality is your quarterback's down and you don't want to where you're supposed to take the L and the money and go. Take the L and the money and go, Texas A&M. That's all I'm saying. LSU is doing it. They have a walk-on quarterback. They're going to take the beat down from Kansas State. They're going to take the money, and they're going to try and propel that into the spring. Now, what if, under all those situations, if LSU wins the game? It's crazy. Absolutely. It's interesting to say. But in 28 in the SEC and surrounding in the area, negative recruited Ole Miss to oblivion. There was a 5-year colonoscopy. Everybody knows about that. We're not saying anything that was strange there. But in doing so, it created a little bit of separation. A little bit of separation, we're not all for one anymore. It's not an SEC type thing, because you actively tried to destroy us. And that goes back from what Dan Mullen did, that everybody that recruited in there, everybody was involved. You actively tried to destroy us. And because of that, you can't expect us to be concerned because the team is 0-4 and soon to be 0-5 in the SEC in bowl games. If you count Texas A&M 0-6, you can't expect us to be angry about that. You can't expect us to really care about that, because the honest thing is, after all of that happened, if the SEC goes 1-12 and that one victory is the Sugar Bowl, this is the greatest season in the history of SEC bowls. Now, I fully expect Georgia and Alabama to be in the national championship game. Fully expect that. But in saying that, you have to realize that doesn't mean you can't root for bad things to happen, because they try to actively destroy the program. So basically, when you're looking at this, it doesn't matter. Who cares if the SEC is struggling in bowls? Because the SEC struggling in bowls is helping Ole Miss. Ole Miss has won something like 16 of 19, trying to go for 17 of 20. They have a chance to win their first 6 games next year. They have a chance to go on quite a run. One of the best runs in the history of the university. Not many people are going to talk about that, but they have a chance to do it. So keep an eye on that. Should be quite interesting. Anyway. All right, BetOnline has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for sports action all this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC to your favorite Vegas casino games, Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2021. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, welcome back. We're going to do a little bit of bowls for today. The 3 games for the day is the Pinstripe Bowl. It opened with Virginia Tech favored by 3. Maryland's now 4-point favored in that game. The Cheez-It Bowl, which I'm kind of looking forward to. Clemson and Iowa State. You have Clemson's opening as a 1-point favorite. It's now Clemson 2.5. No Breece Hall for Iowa State. No quarterback for Clemson, basically. It's going to be a weird game. And the Alamo Bowl, Oklahoma and Oregon. Oklahoma opened as a 4-point favorite, is now 6.5. 6.5-point favorites. So, I'm looking forward to this game. Virginia Tech has a New York Yankees themed helmet for this game. I'm always interested about that. One of my favorite things about the Rose Bowl is the incorporation of the rose into the helmet decal. Pinstripe Bowl is apparently doing that as well. Virginia Tech doing the New York Yankees thing. Other than that, it looks like Michael Vick era jerseys. It looks pretty good. I'm curious to see what Maryland does. Will they do the 80s Maryland or will they do the later Maryland stuff? It should be interesting there. Clemson, will they wear the orange pants? Will they wear the orange pants? That is something I'm interested in. Or do they just break it out for the playoffs? It is what it is there. I'm curious about that. And also I'm curious to see what Iowa State does. Will it be traditional? Will they do the blacks? I actually like the blacks because I just do not like the Iowa State colors, the Cyclones. I just don't dig that at all. Oklahoma and Oregon. From what I've seen in this game, it looks like a pretty standard uniform type game. And that's a little bit disappointing with Oregon being in the game, but Oregon's in the game minus Mario Cristobal and most of the Oregon staff, and Oklahoma, has Bob Stoops as the coach. So it's going to be interim coaches going at each other back and forth in the Alamo Bowl. So it should be fairly interesting to see that. But I'm curious to see what will happen. I want to see Caleb Williams against Oregon. It's a game that I think Oklahoma has a chance to really put their foot on the gas. Jeff Lebby with Caleb Williams could be fairly special. I mean, there's no need to go to the transfer portal at all with him as the quarterback. He's a special dude. But it's something to keep an eye on for this game. But those are the games today. So thank you very much. Also, before we get started, it looks like I found a couple of people for our thing, because basically this show is going to be about perspectives and commentary. That's what this is going to be about. And Kara McCutcheon is going to come on after the new year, and I want to make sure I pronounce his name correctly. Let's see. Tom Vanderford. Potentially coming in after the new year. So what I want is a voice of a couple of fans. And I was want to see how this goes and want to do perspectives, and we're going to have Bill Flowers, and we're going to get the voice of the players. We're going to get the voice of the fans. We're going to get voices from different walks of life. And doing that, you're going to have a segment every day where, they give you their thoughts and they talk about what's going on. And you don't always have to hear me regurgitating stuff over and over and over again. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm really excited for it, but it'll be like after the new year that we break that in. Also, I'm planning on doing an emergency pod basically after the Sugar Bowl. I don't know if that'll be Sunday morning or Saturday night. So we'll see how that handles. But I do want what happens to be fresh. Anyway, Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Tomorrow we will continue Sugar Bowl prep and any news that breaks as well. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert everybody for joining us today. And tomorrow to be a little bit more cleaner. This is all working towards, after the Sugar Bowl, a clean program. Live programs happen. As we know, December's been weird. December's been a wash. But when it comes to this in January, it should clean up quite nicely. Anyway, I will talk to you tomorrow. And, of course, hotty toddy.